Hey, brothers and sisters, I'm Jim Williams, General Vice President here with the International Union. I'm joined by Britton Lofton, our Legislative Affairs Director here at the Union as well. Today we're gonna try to update everybody on some recent activity in Washington, D.C. But first, I want to talk a little bit about where we've come as a union. Starting the beginning of this year, I don't think any of us could have predicted by the middle of May we'd be dealing with all the things we've had to deal with over the course of the last 5-6 months. However, we are. We've seen our members been impacted by the devastating nature of the coronavirus. None of us could have predicted that we would be sitting here today in the middle of May watching our union go through what has been probably the most troubling times that we've been faced with in a long time. Everybody's been affected one way, shape, or form or another. We've had high unemployment in certain areas of the country. We've had other areas where our members have had to continue to work in hazardous conditions, keeping our critical infrastructure moving. We've seen our union respond by staying in close contact with our members, which is the whole hope of what we're doing here again today. We also have seen our union step up, and we've given relief on dues. We've worked really closely with our affiliates. We've heard our members' stories coming in about how they've been impacted, and we've lifted up their stories to help impact our politicians and how they're shaping our government's response to the coronavirus. We've also established a disaster relief fund for our members that anybody can donate to by going through our website, going through our social media channels, because that's what we do as a union. We help one another out in times of need. And we're in that time of need again. Just this last week, the United States House of Representatives passed yet another stimulus package designed to help and give relief to our members and to the workforce of this country. This bill was passed last Friday. We're going to discuss today some of the key components that are in the bill, but most importantly, we want to talk through a little bit the politics behind it as well, because as a union, part of what we do is that we have to engage in politics. We have to make sure that your voices and the concerns of our membership are heard in Washington, D.C. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Britton, last Friday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed what they called the HEROES Act. And we know that that's been like a new piece of legislation that's being proposed. And our members hear a lot of different stories about what's going on really in Washington, D.C. Can you explain the difference between what this bill is versus what other bills in the past that have passed in response to the pandemic are?
Well, this is the House Democrats' next proposal to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. This is their HEROES Act. Before then, they passed a unanimous vote. Nobody came. You remember that? Nobody came to the Hill. It was the coronavirus 3.5. It was the unanimous vote. They just signed off on it. Before that was the CARES package. This was the original package that started the PPP loan program that contractors and many businesses took advantage of. But it also provided for the unemployment insurance and different pieces that we see today. And where we are today is the evolution of all of those packages. Before that CARES 3 package, they passed packages for the government's response. So they would have funded, say, the Centers for Disease Control or the National Institute of Health or, these government agencies to respond to the virus.
And as as we've been hearing from our membership, we know that really some of their concerns center around, number one, their healthcare coverage. A lot of members are concerned that maybe if they haven't worked enough hours in the last quarter or the last year that their healthcare coverage might lapse. Does this bill do anything to address our members' healthcare concerns?
Yes, sir. The bill does provide for healthcare reimbursements for COBRA subsidies. The healthcare reimbursements kick in if you lost hours or been laid off. They also go to January 2021. We thought that could have been longer. There was another bill by Representative Bobby Scott that would have extended those hours those reimbursements to March, but the proposed language did not include that.
So if a member loses their health care coverage, how will it work? Like, will they immediately get notified? Will they be knocked off of their plans? Mm-hmm. Or will they stay on their health care?
They'll stay on their health care plan, yeah.
That's good.
Family health care plan, and the plan will pay for the cost of that.
So you had mentioned that there was the bill that passed previously called CARES. In that, I know there was an increase in unemployment compensation where if you were an unemployed member, you would get an extra $600 from the federal government. You know, we've seen that our members are, have been unemployed now for a while. The construction industry's numbers are at 1.5 million unemployed, and it's growing every single week. The national rate is at 16.5% for construction workers. Is there also relief in here for unemployment for our members that are out of work?
Yes. In that first CARES package, though, it would have only lasted to July 31st. All right, July 31st, you get the state's unemployment assistance, whatever that is, and then you get the $600 pandemic unemployment assistance from the federal government. This is the extension of the unemployment assistance. They're supposed to waive all different types of minutiae and detail with respect to you applying for unemployment insurance and grant you the assistance. Now, in this HEROES Act passage, well, it passed the House. In the HEROES Act that passed the House, it goes through January 2021. I think January 31st, 2021, the unemployment assistance is in there.
So, and that's great because we know that in our industry, we do a lot of ups and downs. And right now with some of our members going back to work, maybe for the summertime, if there is an extended period of unemployment in the fall, this bill would provide relief for our members going into the end of the year, which is good to know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a good backdrop, plus the direct cash assistance at $1,200 a month for up to 5 people in your household. It's completely different than when they did it before, which was there was a differentiation for children where it was $500 a month versus $1,200, but now it's $1,200 for everybody. That's in the HEROES Act along with the unemployment insurance.
And that's real economic relief for all of us, for all of our members. That's good to know. One of the biggest concerns that we've been hearing from our members is going back to work, or if they were continuously working through this pandemic, is the fear that, going to work could be a health and safety problem for them and the spread of the virus on the job sites. Does this bill, address any of the concerns of our members?
It does, Jim. If this bill was passed 7 days after the president signed, OSHA would have to issue an emergency temporary standard. This is a big issue because the AFL this week also filed lawsuit against the federal government on this lack of an OSHA standard. I think the bill, I think you fight in the Senate for this. If they're already pushing employers not having any liability for COVID-19 related claims, then they're going to be against OSHA standards.
That's really important because as a union, we've been really trying to have our voice heard as well, too, about the lack of OSHA standard or the lack of employer responsibility related to making sure our members are safe on the job site. And we're asking our members to have their voices heard too by sending letters to the Department of Labor demanding that Secretary Scalia have OSHA be responsible for making sure that our workers go to work safe and that employers are held responsible if they're not provided a safe workplace. That's the least our government can do. We've been advocating for the government to pump money into infrastructure spending as a way to make sure our members get back to work pretty quickly. Does this bill do much to fund infrastructure or get our members back to work?
It does a little bit to maintain the programs that are already going on, same as the previous packages, right? They just put enough in there to maintain what was going on and maybe provide for a little bit on the back end to put people back to work. It does maintain Davis-Bacon protections for all the infrastructure dollars that are located in the money. In this package, though, it put in $15 billion for the Department of Transportation. That's for highway or bridge projects or tunnel construction. It also included money for state DOTs and federal transit agencies. So that was a small stimulus. But what we anticipate is that the Senate and the House are also developing their own infrastructure packages, and later this year you'll see bigger infrastructure packages come out of each chamber.
And that makes sense given the nature of we're going to have a recovery. The way our economy has been, decimated, and making sure that our members get back to work long term has got to be a main priority of ours going forward. But in this bill itself, there isn't a ton of financial investments in infrastructure. So that's another piece that we're going to have to keep fighting for going forward.
Yeah, we got to keep pushing for that. We certainly have to remain vigilant and protective of labor standards within those infrastructure packages as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. Another big area of concern from our members is about the security of their retirement funds going forward. You know, they've seen and we've seen the stock markets be volatile over the last couple months. You know, the concern over the lost hours because of unemployment. Is there relief in this bill for pension plans like ours too?
Yes, the HEROES Act does include two provisions for pension plans. One is the Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act, which is put up by Senate Democrats. It's a low-interest loan proposal. It goes with a couple of technical changes to support the pensions. Then there's also the other plan would be the GROW Act, which creates the composite plan.
And a composite plan is dangerous to how our plan operates. What we're asking for is for our politicians to support how our members' current retirement system works, which is our defined benefit plan, whereas the GROW Act would provide for a hybrid plan, which is dangerous to the long-term security of our members' retirement. And, you know, we're asking our members to have their voice heard in supporting the language that's going to help our pension plan, our current pension plan, and not force our pension plan to have to make any changes to their long-term retirement stability, right?
Correct.
Now that we know this bill passed the House last week, what happens next?
Well, we go to the Senate. Well, let's stay on the House for a second real quick. I want to say that the House probably won't be voting again until the 27th or the 28th. They could bring up some coronavirus-related legislation, but right now they have something around public surveillance going on those days. But that's the next vote. But the Senate has been meeting, confirming judges, confirming appointees, and saying, this is what we are going to demand in the next coronavirus package. And their list of demands are removal of employer liability for COVID-19 related claims, more strings on the money to state and local governments. And right now, that's what we've been hearing, and maybe a technical fix on the PPP to extend it from 8 to 24 weeks. But that's what I got right now.
So if our members want to have their voices heard, currently the bill that is being sent over to the Senate includes extended unemployment to the end through the end of the year, continued health care coverage, relief for our pension plans, a health and safety standard, and in order to have that, it's got to pass the Senate. When is the Senate going to act?
When we make them act. They're not going to act. Mitch McConnell has his. They used to say everything that comes from the House goes to McConnell's graveyard, and it sits there. And so we have to make him act. Right now, politically speaking, he thinks he has cover, and he doesn't have to act.
We've seen numerous bills passed and trillions of dollars being spent already. Basically, we've just gotten unemployment insurance extended for our members that can run out in July. Right, and we've seen a form of stimulus in the form of the $1,200 and then the subsidized, for
Subsidized
family.
Yeah, and the healthcare piece, they're trying to go towards the OSHA standard, but you're going to have to fight for that in the Senate. The Senate's going to put up their PPP again, and they're going to come with all these technical changes to benefit the corporations that we just discussed. They also got the Main Street Industry Lending Program out there that hasn't been really used yet. That's like a $500 billion pot of money for corporations. So it's really out there for them.
Well, then that's the call to action, brothers and sisters. You know, we have to have our voices heard. We have to stand up and we have to demand, as trillions of dollars are being spent to prop up our economy and as uncertainty to our futures grow, we have to stand up and be heard. If we want to fight to make sure that our unemployment insurance and compensation is extended through the end of this year, then we have to make our voice heard. If we want to make sure that our members' health care coverage doesn't get lost throughout the course of this year, then we have to stand up and have our voices heard. If we want to protect our pensions going forward, then we have to stand up and make our voices heard. If we want to be health and safety conscious and protected on the job sites, we got to stand up and make our voices heard. Now's the time we're going to have to call to action everything again. Make the phone calls to Congress. Make the phone calls to the Senate. Have your voices heard through sending videos in so we can lift up your stories and have them heard. We got to have our voices heard by sending letters to the Hill. It's time to come to action. It's time to come together as a union and have our voices heard, because that's what a union does, is we fight for our members and we fight for the rights of our members so that we get a piece of this big pie that's being spent on the American public.